All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going on a pretty wild ride through the history of warfare, basically looking at it through the lens of its weapons. We're going to go from the very first sharpened stick all the way to the one weapon that could literally end the world. But to really get this story, we've got to start with a question. And it's not, what was the deadliest weapon? No, it's what was the deadliest idea? What's the one concept that just completely changed the game when it comes to how we fight? And here's the answer. It's this one simple idea: killing from a distance. Seriously, that's the thread that ties everything we're about to talk about together. Think about it. That desire to hit your enemy without getting hit back, that's what drove every single leap forward in weapons tech, from a guy throwing a rock for the first time all the way up to an intercontinental ballistic missile.
Okay, so let's rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Because the big ideas that would shape war for thousands of years, well, they weren't cooked up in some high-tech lab. They were figured out by our earliest ancestors.
You know, the first weapons were about as simple and brutal as it gets. A big stone club? Sure, it'll fracture a skull, but you have to be right there, face to face. The spear? Now that changed everything. It was really the first weapon made for a specific job. And it gave you choices. You could use it up close for thrusting, or you could throw it. And that right there, that's the first tiny step towards our big idea: killing from a distance. And then came a total game changer: the bow and arrow. People call it the great equalizer for a reason. All of a sudden, being the biggest, strongest person didn't guarantee you'd win. The smaller person, the slower person, even the person who's totally outnumbered, they now had a real shot, a way to kill from a safe distance. And believe me, this thing would dominate warfare for tens of thousands of years. So this trend just keeps on rolling with the discovery of metal. The Bronze Age wasn't just about making sharper, tougher versions of the old stuff. No way. It introduced completely new ways of fighting, the kind of warfare that could literally build empires. So you get things like the composite bow, which was a true masterpiece of engineering, made of wood, horn, and sinew. People called it the deadliest weapon of its time. Then you have specialized swords, like the Egyptian khopesh, with that wicked curve designed to hook right around an enemy's shield. And then, what do? You put it all together. You take these archers and put them on chariots, creating these mobile missile platforms. I mean, at the Battle of Kadesh, there were something like 5,000 or 6,000 of these things on the field. The scale of that kind of mechanized war was it was completely unimaginable back then. And this whole idea, this dominance of ranged weapons, it absolutely continues right into the medieval era. This quote here from the Battle of Agincourt, it just says it all. You have these heavily armored French knights. I mean, they were basically the tanks of their day, and they were just mowed down by English longbows before they even got close enough to swing their swords. Just incredible. For the most part, the medieval world was a constant back and forth, right? Better arrows, then better armor, then better arrows again. But the Byzantine Empire had a secret weapon, something totally different, something that just seemed to defy the laws of physics and the normal rules of war. They called it Greek fire. And just try to imagine this for a second. You're on a wooden ship and you see this liquid fire being sprayed at you from another ship. It bursts into flame the second it hits anything, and you can't put it out with water. It just keeps burning. The psychological terror must have been off the charts. It gave the Byzantines control of the seas for centuries. And the wildest part? The formula was so top secret, so closely guarded, that to this day, we have no idea how they made it. It's just gone. But as terrifying as Greek fire was, even it was about to be left in the dust by the next massive leap forward. We're talking about gunpowder. And gunpowder didn't just make old weapons better, it made them totally obsolete. It basically hit the reset button on the entire rulebook of war. It all started in China with something called the fire lance, which was pretty much a spear that shot fire and shrapnel, a primitive shotgun really. But fast forward to the 14th century and cannons arrive in Europe. And just like that, those massive castle walls that were unbeatable for centuries, well, now they could be turned into rubble. By the 1600s, the age of the longbow was officially over. It was replaced by rows and rows of soldiers firing muskets all at once. And this wasn't just a military change. It was a huge shift for society. Think about it. A master archer took years, sometimes a lifetime, of constant practice to become deadly. A guy with a musket? You could train him in a few weeks. So power wasn't about individual skill anymore. It was about which nation-state could build the most guns, make the most gunpowder, and drill the biggest armies. It was the rise of the state-run war machine. Okay, from here on out, the pace of change just gets terrifyingly fast. I mean, it accelerates like crazy. The world wars kick off an era where entire countries retooled their industries for one single purpose: to find bigger, better, and more efficient ways to kill people. In World War I, if you had to name one weapon that just dominated everything, it was artillery. Just look at this number: 58%. More than half of all British casualties on the Western Front came from artillery shells fired from miles and miles away. This wasn't combat anymore, this was industrial-scale killing. And this quote really gets to the psychological horror of it all. The enemy wasn't some guy in a trench you could see anymore. It was just an invisible force, a shell that could literally fall out of the sky and kill you from 2 miles away with zero warning. It's completely abstract, totally impersonal, and just unbelievably devastating. So World War II takes that logic and, thanks to air power, blows it up to cover entire countries. The battlefield isn't a line on a map anymore. Now it's your factory, your port, your city. The whole idea of strategic bombing was to deliberately go after civilian factories and morale, to break the will to fight. And it culminated in horrors like the firebombing of Tokyo, where one single night of conventional bombing killed an estimated 100,000 people. And that brings us to the final, terrifying chapter. This is the logical endpoint of that very first idea we talked about: killing from a distance. We've reached the point where one single weapon could do what used to take thousands of planes and whole armies months to accomplish. So, in 1945, the first atomic bomb hits Hiroshima with the power of about 15 kilotons of TNT. Just 16 years later, the Soviets test their Tsar Bomba. Its power wasn't measured in kilotons anymore. It was 50,000 kilotons, or 50 megatons. Just look at the difference on this chart. The leap in power it's just staggering. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Thousands of times more powerful than the bomb that leveled a city. The shockwave from this one explosion literally circled the entire planet 3 times. This thing was never meant to be a practical weapon. It was a statement. It was a message to the world that humanity now, without a doubt, had the power to completely annihilate itself. And this raw power led to the terrifyingly stable logic of the Cold War. You've got ICBMs that can hit any target on the planet in about half an hour. And you've got nuclear submarines hiding in the depths of the ocean, impossible to find, ready to launch a devastating counterattack. So the only thing that prevented all-out nuclear war was the absolute certainty that if you started one, you would be destroyed too. No one could win. Which leaves us right here, with this final, chilling question. For decades, that crazy logic, mutually assured destruction, it actually worked. It kept the peace. But you have to remember, it was the only thing standing between the world and what exactly? A horror so profound,